What is the single worst movie you sat through hoping it would get better, but didn't? The Last Airbender, the movie. It's been 10 years and I still become enraged when I think about it. I saw this movie at midnight at HS. Everyone in line was dressed up in costume, including a cabbages guy. As the film started, he shouts out the catchphrase. Yay, everyone laughs and it's excited about the movie starting. After the movie finished, everyone is silent. He shouts out, "What was that?" "Yes, my cabbages guy." "Well said." Fantastic Four 2015. That movie is a dumpster fire of epic proportions, but I wanted to see what they did with Doom, so I stayed till the end. But they freaked him up too. Mean Girls 2. Thought it was going to be like the first one, ended up with a Walmart version. Allegiant. Nothing actually happens in the film. I could have watched paint dry for 2 hours and it would have been a more productive use of my time than watching that film. Super disappointing, especially since the first two films were fairly decent. Transformers, The Last Night. For a movie that's called Transformers, they sure do put a huge emphasis on everything except them. Optimus is in the movie for like 8 minutes, and it's painfully long. The new Doolittle movie with Robert Downey Jr. The climax of the movie is him pulling a bagpipe out of a dragon's ass. I was just sat there like, who approved this to be made? Jack and Jill. Wasted an hour and a half of my life that I'll never get back. It takes a special kind of bad to sweep the Razzies. Adam Sandler won Worst Actor and Worst Actress for that. It also won Worst Film, Worst Screenplay, Worst Screen Couple, Worst Director, Worst Supporting Actor, Worst Supporting Actress, and Worst Ensemble. Percy Jackson. I'm not sure how enjoyable it is if you haven't read the books, but if you have, Jesus mother freaking Christ, it's unbearable. The only similarity to the books are the names of the characters. That's it. The story has absolutely nothing to do with any of what happens in the books. It's just pure disappointment. It starts off pretty weak and then gradually gets worse, and with each passing second it simply gets more and more depressing. You don't want to stop watching because you're still hoping that maybe it'll turn around for the better, and actually make sense for once. But no. It doesn't. The credits roll and there's a deep feeling of depression caused by disappointment, but also relief because the horrors are finally over. I think I can provide some perspective. I watched the movie without the books and really enjoyed it, and the entire concept of a demigod summer camp with quest here and there. It led me to the books. I fell hard into the books and read the entire series. It was fantastic, and I didn't even think about the movies. Then I went back and watched the movies and felt betrayed. Then I learned that Rick Riordan, author, bashed the movies and had notes for them that they completely ignored, and he was super pissed about it. He even warned the studio that they are going to piss off a very fierce and loyal fan base. He was right. So yeah, when the author is all, "No, please stop, you're killing it. You should probably listen." All of the Maze Runner movies after the first one. Sure, they were good, but as far as I remember, there was no maze running. I read the books first and they were amazing. Watched the movies afterwards and was disappointed. And everyone who didn't read the books was amazed, and I was just like, calm down, this isn't that good, especially compared to the books. The Dark Tower. The only reason I didn't leave was cause I was in southern Florida for a trip and went to the movies to get out of the heat for a while. The movie AC was the only good thing I found with that movie. Holmes and Watson. This is one of the rare movies listed that I can personally understand and relate to. Most listed are just blatantly bad movies from the jump. Zero hope that they would be anything near good. One person posted Battlefield Earth, Lamau. Like, no. That was never going to be good in a realistic sense, but I'm approaching gatekeeping here, so I'll get to the point. Holmes and Watson is shockingly bad because it's made by and starring people that usually make good comedy. It was expected to be at least an average comedy movie, and it is truly unwatchable. It's just so bad, and not in a good bad way like Battlefield Earth or any, just bad like every Adam Sandler movie made after 1998. H&W should have been good, and it's truly shocking in how unfunny it is. I kept waiting for it to turn the corner of have some deep, Kaufman-esque reveal that would show how the previous hour has been one long build-up to a punchline, anything. Something. Yet, it just ended after a truly miserable 90-ish minutes. It felt like a 4-hour movie, the mark of a truly bad film, haha. The Amazing Spider-Man 2. After making Spider-Man 3 a mess by putting in 3 villains and pointless subplots, Sony decides to reboot the franchise and does the exact same thing in the sequel to the reboot. I forget if it was Amazing Spider-Man 1 or 2, but I remember seeing it in the theater, but then like a week or two after I saw it, all recollection of the movie and plot left me. I remember going to the theater, but I couldn't tell you anything about the movie aside from maybe there was a big bridge and the rest is blurred. It's like when you have remember a dream and then wait a few hours after waking up and try to remember it again. God, aside from a few vague and motionless mental screenshots, what happened? I don't get it. Maybe I should watch the movies again. The Lion King remake. Not that it was the worst movie I have ever seen, but I had such high expectations for it, both from the original being one of my all-time favorites to the Jungle Book remake setting the bar so high, and the entire time I just kept thinking it can't honestly be this bad, it will get better. Needless to say, it never got any better, and at the end of the movie I walked out so sad, lol. Disney needs to realize one of the biggest appeal of their older movies is the humor. It was always the type of humor that could be enjoyed by someone of any age. Their live-action remakes have stripped out any and all comedic factors, and then you realize what's left isn't all that fun to watch. That and the villains. They're evil, but fun and sometimes have the best songs. Oh, I guess they'll cut that out too then. I don't have the highest hopes for this Mulan one coming out, but I really hope I'm wrong. The Avengers. It was 1998. No one other than me and a couple friends I made listen to me even knew what Marvel's Avengers were. My mom is pleading with me not to go to this movie. It's based on a spy show from the 60s, you'll be disappointed, don't waste the time. But I convinced my dad to take me, and boy was it a shit show. At the point where Uma Thurman says "how now brown cow" as a password, I said freak this, in the way only a 10-year-old can, and decided I would go to sleep. Best nap my dad and I ever took. The entire Divergent series. The first movie was actually pretty good despite the fact that Theo James was supposed to be playing an 18-year-old. Insurgent and Allegiant were the worst. They completely ignored how the outside world was written in the book. In the book there were still billboards and trains on train tracks. There were burnt-out abandoned buildings still standing, and sidewalks/roads were still there. When the people from the compound show up, they show up in an old pickup truck. In the movie the outside world is an orange wasteland and they arrive to the compound, which is supposed to be an old airport that still looks like it was an airport, in freaking bubbles. Also, spoilers, Triss is supposed to freaking die. She dies in the books. Why did they keep her alive in the movie? The movies are complete shit and I am utterly disappointed. They were just trying to ride the Hunger Games wave, but they failed miserably. The Last Jedi. Started off with a yo mama joke. Immediately knew I was in for something I was not prepared for. Then shortly after, Luke throws his lightsaber behind him off a cliff. Clearly meant to be funny. I had to force myself to keep watching by praying and hoping there would be some redeeming moments. There wasn't. No lightsaber fight. The choreography of the fight in the throne room is the most horrible thing I've ever seen. Have no idea how it made it past editing. I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House. It was getting some good press at the time and was newly released on Netflix, but I try to avoid spoilers, so all I knew about it was that it was horror, people liked it, and it's got something to do with a house. Probably haunted. The movie is terrible. I watched it to the end thinking that something was going to happen that would make me like it, because hey, people liked it for some reason, right? And they were spending a lot of time building suspense, so there must be a really great payoff near the end of the movie, right? Right? No. Nothing happens in the movie. Turns out the people who liked it just liked the setting and costumes. The most eventful thing that happens, if I recall it right, is that some mold grows in a corner of a room. Someone should probably clean it before it becomes a health hazard. I really like MIB and I was hoping that International would be good. The trailer was look great too. But I was wrong, like 2 hours wrong. MIB International did that same thing that all the recent reboots seem to do. In place of the likable, charming characters and witty, rememberable dialogue of their predecessors, they have bickering. Just bickering. Bickering can be fun, in moderation, but that's all the characters say in those movies, except when they're spouting exposition. And they don't bicker with each other or even at each other. They don't really interact at all, they read their lines at some other character, not even looking at each other. It's sometimes endless, going on for minutes, each refusing to let the other have the last word. It's always the same delivery, the same head nods, and the same inflections, like the actors have forgotten who they even are anymore and are being puppeted by some overpaid, under-criticized writer that dumps out screenplays more often than he shits. I don't know if there's some central person or agency responsible for that style of remake, but I hate it. Ralph Breaks the Internet. I loved the original, loved the trailers, and I went in with high expectations that it would be good. Boy was I wrong. Very inaccurate representation of the internet, and clearly didn't have the heart of the original, even the characters were a mess. Trying to keep this spoiler-free, in a nutshell it's a poorly written movie with a bucket load of shoehorned outdated internet jokes and Disney references. 4/10. The only good thing about this movie was the end credits scenes. I can't remember the name of it, but it was my mom's favorite as a kid. Summary: there was a single mom who was a scientist and her son. There was a war going on between robots and humans, not like you think though. The robots wanted peace but were being used as slaves and entertainment in death traps. Then we find out, oh no, little kid is a robot, the only one that looks like a human to be intact. The scientist mom drops him off in the woods and leaves. He meets a tin can guy and a few other robots. They all get kidnapped, brought to a circus to be killed, then boom, aliens take over. Everyone dies except Robot Kid. A couple years later he's in the ocean and finds something that will make the aliens grant him a wish. He wishes to see his mom one last time and spends the day with her. Then she dies in his arms. The end. Ad Astra. Was told it was a deeply thought-provoking movie about the sheer isolation of space. Spent the entire movie bored out of my mind. Movie should have just been called Brad Pitt Goes Somewhere. A thing happens and Brad Pitt is told to go to the moon, where someone tells him to go to Mars, where someone tells him to go to Neptune, where Tommy Lee Jones tells him to go back to Earth, and the movie is over. None of the movie's most interesting posed questions get answered or are explored. Just Brad Pitt Goes Somewhere. What's up with the moon being an active hot zone for piracy? What's the deal with the Nordic space station experiments? Why does this guy on Mars with top military clearance have a man bun? Why does Tommy Lee Jones, whose only mission is to search for alien activity using long-range sensors, have enough antimatter to destroy the solar system? All interesting questions and world details. None of them get answered or explored. Instead, we spend the entire time listening to Brad Pitt thinking about how stoically badass he is, or hearing other characters talk about how stoically badass he is. This movie was awful and I hated it. The Hobbit movies. I really enjoyed the Lord of the Ring trilogy, so when I heard they were making The Hobbit I was pumped for a really good, short adventure film in the same style as Jackson's Lord of the Ring films. And they sucked. All of them. Which, having it be more than a single film, was a blatant cash grab and immediately nonsensical. It's a book that an average 4th grader can finish in a day, maybe 2 if busy. They made 3 different 200+ minute movies from it, lol. Then they were just awful. I was not surprised at all to hear about all the issues the filming had, as nothing felt right and basic mistakes were constantly showing themselves in the way of unfinished CGI to continuity errors to you name it. Not good movies, and I really wanted to like them. The Assistant. It's basically a topical drama about workplace sexual misconduct, except it never happens to a POV character and is only implied to have happened at all. I was waiting for over an hour for the plot to begin. It's a movie where literally nothing happens. Imagine if Frodo never left the Shire, or if Luke never leaves his uncle's farm, except those metaphors have the benefit of taking place in interesting locations. The Assistant takes place in boring offices, boring rooms, and walking on nondescript streets going towards another dreary office space. Boring and bland all the way through. None of the dreadful plot or the uninspired sets are not helped by the painfully stale camera work. I guess there aren't many interesting shots that can be done when the only scenes that happen are people taking in an office. It's like watching paint dry, only without any color. This movie is painfully dull to look at. The colors are gray and the whole thing looks washed out, like someone turned down the saturation on the whole project. Suicide Squad. The main reason I saw it in theaters was to kill time, but dear God, I should have just stared at my thumbs for 2 hours. I knew it wasn't going to be good, but I was hoping at any point during the movie there'd at least be one redeeming 5-minute stretch of the movie, but there is none. It's edited like they're trying to get through this story as quickly as possible, which is A+, but it makes every scene so jarring as they keep cutting every 2 seconds to a new character. I was talking to my friend during the movie about walking out. The only reason we didn't is because if we did, we'd just be sitting in a dead mall in upstate New York for hours. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. While it isn't the worst film I've ever seen by any measure, it is the most disappointing. It felt like a meandering slog through an unremarkable story about 2 unremarkable characters. The film felt as if there was no real plot and no real tension, and that it relied entirely on the audience's pre-existing knowledge of the events around it to provide the plot and tension. Anytime something intriguing happened that could serve to raise to stakes, it was abandoned almost immediately to serve only in making Brad Pitt's character look like a badass. The violence in the movie came as far too much of a surprise far too late in the film to fit in with the rest of the film, and so it just felt unearned and gratuitous. I understand that may have been the point in itself, but it seemed badly executed to me. This was disappointing when coming from the man behind Reservoir Dogs, Inglourious Basterds and The Hateful Eight, all of which feature equally shocking violence integrated seamlessly. After watching it, I genuinely thought the only purpose of the film was that Tarantino was making a joke about the state of Hollywood at the start of his career versus the state of Hollywood now, or perhaps the public perception of his movies and his perception of his audience. But as time went on, I realized I was trying to find something to like about a film that I considered to be boring and, frankly, bad, because it came from someone whose artistic vision I have always respected, and found to be valid and incredibly important on the landscape of modern cinema. When the credits rolled, I was shocked. I had never before felt so unsatisfied by a film. I didn't watch the trailers, I went in on nothing more than a trust that Tarantino would deliver me with a solid slice of fried, pop culture entertainment. I came away with nothing but a film that was too long, feeling as if it had been made by someone fresh out of film school who loved Pulp Fiction and Hateful Eight, while lacking an understanding in how to put the pieces together. All the same, I will absolutely go and see Mr. Tarantino's next film in cinemas. I just hope it connects with me better.